Hi, it's Zoe Routh, and I'm thrilled to be here with Liam Martin. He is the co-founder and CMO of TimeDoctorAndStaff.com, a totally remote, I think they're both totally remote businesses, and we're going to
Mhm.
get the inside scoop on how to run really successful remote businesses. Now, some really cool stuff about Liam. The first thing you're going to notice from my Australian listeners is that he sounds funny, just like me, because he's Canadian, eh?
Yep, that's
he
true.
li- yeah, yay. He lives in the capital of Canada, Ottawa. And a few other interesting things about Liam is that as a teenager, he was a competitive ice dancer. Now, I begged him to send me a picture of him in his ice dancer costume, but he denies there being any surviving pictures of such times. But he used to train 8 to 12 hours, really 8 to 12 hours per day. That's how
Oh
much he
yeah,
trained. Oh my God. On the ice, that's crazy. Um,
yeah. I was on ice and off ice, but it was definitely my life was doing that.
Oh my God. Well, that's full on. And as you can
Hmm.
imagine, that led to, well, unfortunately, it led to a knee injury. And so you went to Plan B and you went into Plan B academia, been
Hmm.
down that route myself, until you found out he didn't like teaching. That's kind of a big thing if you're going to be an academic. So Liam began building a web-based business, tutoring business, and got more involved in tech companies. And so then TimeDoctorStaff.com was born. And it is now tracking as a business more than 1 million hours per month. So I'm so excited to find out more about this business and your story. So welcome, Liam.
Thanks for having me, Zoe. Yeah, I think that you did a lot of homework. I'm quite impressed. You did background work on that. I don't know if it was you who was doing it or one of your staff, but that's a pretty good one. Very few people are able to find out about my ice dancing past.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know whether I talk about it all the time in the podcast that I'm doing, but I do, that was a part of my life that I think gave me the discipline to be able to succeed. If I don't have any children now, but if I were to have children, I think I would have them get into any type of sport or discipline and try to do it at a high level because I came out of of skating. And I remember I went into university and I had a massive kind of, I had a bit of a complex because I thought everyone else, I kind of got in on a prayer. I was tutored throughout the end of my high school career. So because I was teaching, because I was skating so much, I was able to, uh, I got tutors basically. Once you become a carded athlete in Canada, you can get tutors and physiotherapists and psychologists and an entire team to be able to make sure that you are successful at your sport. And when I broke my knee, it was like a horse being let out, you know, for the for the shotgun in the head because you're
Oh,
done, right? You're finished. As an athlete, they can no longer invest in you, and therefore you're out. So I was I got into university and I was so happy about that, but I had a high school diploma, but it was one of those sort of representative high school diplomas. It wasn't from a formal high school. I'd been to about 3 or 4 and then just finished off with tutoring and got all the credits that I needed. So I walk in with 400 other students into this big, huge auditorium. And I had entered mid-semester. So I had entered into the winter semester, which is not the one where you don't really know everybody. Everybody else is kind of knows everyone. And and I was just so disciplined at education because I was so scared that I was going to get kicked out of university. And I did fantastically at university because I was a lot more disciplined from skating. When you're doing 8 to 12 hours of training a day, there is no time for anything else. So school was a breeze because I didn't spend time doing the things that university kids usually do. And then when I got into grad school, that's when I actually started to kind of screw around a little bit more when I recognized education wasn't for me.
so I'm curious about this whole notion of discipline actually in this context, because as an ice skater, you said you had an entire team keeping you accountable and
Yes.
helping you structure your day. And then going to university, that doesn't exist anymore. So it sounds like it wasn't the accountability that kept you disciplined. Um, or was it just a habit of staying very focused on one thing?
I think it's the habit of staying focused on one thing. The accountability partners can take you only so far, but I had a choreographer, I had a skating partner, I had a main coach, I had a technical coach, I had a off-ice coach, I had a trainer, a physiotherapist, a massage therapist, a reflexologist, a psychologist, an entire team that's there to be able to make sure that they're putting out good product, which is me. But at the end of the day, you put in what you want to put into it to succeed at the sport, like anything. And it was just a very ice skating or ice dancing isn't as precise as business. And one of the things that I love about business is it has a very clear understanding of how the points are made. Money.
Yeah.
So if you make money, you're doing something right, and no one can give you an opinion as to whether I think that Zoe is good at business. Well, I don't think that. I know that because Zoe has built this business, and she succeeded here and she succeeded there. It's very factual as opposed to a judge judging you, which is qualitative instead of quantitative.
Yeah, right. So having been through those sort of three major pathways, so from a professional ice skater or competitive ice skater to academic to entrepreneur, has your definition of success changed?
I don't really think so. I think my definition of success now is just the ability to do whatever I want, whenever I want to do it. That's pretty much that's the archetypal definition of success for me, is I can sit and watch Netflix all day. I can work on a project that I'm really passionate about all day. I can do podcasts all day. I can go out on, trips all day if I want to. I really have that freedom. Now, once you're given that freedom, ironically, you end up doing the things that you're very passionate about, which are generally not sitting on your butt watching Netflix all day long. But that's my definition of success, is having the freedom to make my own choices, the ability to create agency in my life. So the ability to just say, I've decided to grab my passport and walk out the door today and do something else. And I can at any point. I wake up and I choose to go to work every day. It's not a requirement.
And I think that promise of flexibility and choice and autonomy is one of the most attracting things to running remote businesses, and is at the forefront or the underpinning of the digital nomad movement, where people can work anywhere in the world. So tell us, because you're an entrepreneur, but you could have started a retail business. So tell us about why pick remote business apart from the autonomy piece, and how that translated into starting Time Doctor and Staff.com, and tell us a little bit about that business.
Sure. So I had a tutoring business, as I believe you had mentioned, and one of the biggest problems that I had inside of that business, it was a remote tutoring business. So we were tutoring students through Skype, and I would have a student that I would bill for 10 hours, and then the student wouldn't come back saying, I didn't work with my tutor for 10 hours, I worked with them for 5. And then I would go to the tutor and I would say, hey, did you work with this student for 10 hours? Of course I did. Okay, well then I'd have to refund the student for the 5 hours, and I'd have to pay the tutor for the full 10 hours. And then I would be losing money on the deal. So I ended up with that becoming a major problem inside of the mechanics of the business. As I continued to grow the business out, those mechanics started to you could see churn working into the system at a pretty aggressive rate. The faster I grew, the slower, bigger that churn problem would become. And I was at South by Southwest, which is it's kind of like spring break for nerds. It's a big technology conference in Austin, Texas. They have hundreds of thousands of people. This was 8-9 years ago when it was a lot smaller. And that's where I met Rob, my co-founder, and he had a little app that he was using for his internal team that measured not just how long somebody worked, but all of the websites and applications and mouse movements and keyboard movements associated with that type of activity. So I was able to very clearly quantify exactly how long somebody worked, and I could make sure that it was actual work that was being done, not something that somebody was telling me. And that was a big game changer for me. That's something that could have completely revolutionized my first business. And I thought to myself, man, this could be much bigger than what I currently have right now. I'd love to be able to see if we could actually make this a commercially viable business. And 6 years later, it is a commercially viable business. We have 86 employees in 27 different countries all over the world. And we have stuck to the core mission statement, which is we want to empower workers to work wherever they want, whenever they want. So we, in essence, want to empower workers with that same type of freedom that most successful entrepreneurs already have. We want to give that to everyone around the world, where you can just work from a laptop and be wherever you are and still get work done.
Okay, so you're pitching this as basically as proof to the remote worker to say, hey, I did actually do the work that I said I did, and here's the evidence. Is that how you?
That's it. Exactly. So we've got two sides of our market. We've got the customers, which are the employers, and then we've got the users, which is like, we've got another side of the customer base, which is the people that use the app. So we need to always make sure that we have an even keel between the two. So fundamentally, Time Doctor is a productivity tool. So right now I'm working on podcast. I've been working on it for 18 minutes and 22 seconds. And if I went to Facebook right now, I would get a pop-up saying, are you still working on podcast? Because it would be pulling me out of my productive state and pulling me back into a state of productivity.
Hey, come on, this is a productive exercise.
Well, yeah, it is a productive exercise, but everyone gets distracted. And I think we exist in, I believe, and this is becoming clearer and clearer now with the rise of the Cambridge Analytica data scandal that just happened recently.
Yeah.
We live in, I'm going to call it the distraction economy. The people, the companies that are the best at distracting you make the most money. So if you just look particularly online, Facebook is spending trillions of dollars on figuring out how to distract you better than Twitter or YouTube or WhatsApp or Instagram. You look at the most addictive games on the internet. There's a company that I love to use as an example. It's called Supercell, and they make two games, Clash of Clans and Clash Royale. And they're funny little characters, like comic book characters, and they have a little base, and it's an interesting game. Supercell makes about $1 billion a month.
Oh my God, a month? $1 billion a month?
A month, yes. On transactions, on just these virtual transactions. And the way that it works is the game is free to play. So the barrier to entry is very easy. And then you will get a notification saying, hey, your base is being attacked by another human player. You need to open up the application right now to protect yourself against this incursion. And they do it perfectly. And it's addictive. It is, I mean, if you look at the same, and there's a lot of data that's coming out, more and more data coming out every day, showing that these types of games, they've figured out how to just give you the melatonin or the drip feed of positive sort of
dopamine.
Dopamine, that's it. The dopamine smash to just say, oh yeah, okay, I've got to pop up, or I've got to turn this app on right now. And every time you do that, you're being pulled out of productivity, and you're being put, it's not just the 1 to 2 minute distraction. It is the, okay, what was I doing? I was writing a blog post. Okay, what was I writing it about? Well, I was writing it about this. I better read the last 2 pages so I understand where my context was. Okay, I've read those last 2 pages. I might as well look at these other 3 sources that I was also looking at. That's 16, 17, 18 minutes. It's not just the 2 minute distraction. It's a massive hole inside of your day. And if you have even 4 or 5 of those, you've lost half your workday to these distractions. So it's really stopping people from accomplishing deep work
Yeah.
My friend Cal Newport has written a fantastic book called Deep Work for anyone that's interested.
It's a great book. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really great if you want to just understand how to get those distractions out of your life and why it's important to be able to complete deep work. So that's something that I would very much, we try to build a weapon against the distraction economy. Yeah. So something that can stop you from getting distracted by the Facebook notifications and the Instagram posts and all those types of things, and get you back into a state of focused deep work and doing what you want to do, not what the apps think, not what the apps are trying to convince you is the right decision to do. Because no one wants to, people start these games when they're bored, or they start going on Facebook when they're bored, and they're really just looking for something. They're looking for that dopamine hit because they recognize that when they go onto Facebook, they do get it. So subconsciously, they're trying to get back into that space, but eventually it becomes completely addictive because you're going to have a lower and lower feedback loop every single time. So you have to spend more time on it, or you have to work on different apps, or you have to play different games to be able to get there. And it's just a really, in my opinion, it's a very negative cycle, and something that we should really be looking at, because it is creating a lot of very addicted people in the world. And particularly for entrepreneurs, we're much more susceptible to that than others. So it's important for us to be able to protect ourselves against it. I'm a perfect example. I'm very susceptible to them. And I have my phone that it doesn't beep at me past 5 p.m. for anything. I disconnect my workspace and my home space. Even though I work from home, I have an office where I only do work. If I want to do a personal phone call or even a personal Facebook message, I will take the phone out of this room and I will go somewhere else. And I'll do my social in another space, and I'll do my work in this space. Those are the types of things that are really important to be able to create consistent deep work. And once if you even lock in 2 to 3 hours of that per day, you'll double your overall productivity and output. And then you can accomplish things that people are wowed at. But it's just because they have a handicap of having this distraction economy and not understanding how it works.
Okay, so just a point of clarification on the technical aspects of Time Doctor. So it's an app, you use it, it tracks your use. You can program it to give you notifications about when you want to do deep work, so it's got some alert system. Yes,
it does have some alerts. It has some pop-ups. So if you go to a distracting website, you'll have a pop-up that will say, "Hey, are you still working on podcast?" as an example. And then I'll say, brother. To a degree, it definitely is. And then inside of that, we also use a lot of machine learning to be able to gain insights from it. So as an example, with our enterprise product, staff.com, we can predict with about an 89% accuracy rate whether you're going to quit your job 6 months before you do.
What?
So we use all of these we're analyzing all of the different components of what you do throughout your workday, and then we can tell you, based off of the history that we've seen before using machine learning and artificial intelligence, who is going to quit and why they're going to quit your organization.
Okay, so staff.com, tell me about that particular business. How is it related to Time Doctor?
So that's generally the same product, except it's designed for enterprise companies and very much focused on machine learning. I've recognized at this point that artificial intelligence is probably going to completely change. It has already changed every aspect of human society, and we're only at the very cusp of that at this point, where it's completely changed politics, sociology, economics. Cambridge Analytica is another example. They're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to figure out what triggers they need to send you to change your political stance or to make you angry enough that you would vote for the other person. And they understand exactly when to do it at the right time because it's just an input-output device. I know for me, all of my degrees were in sociology and academia. And when I was in grad school back in 2006, I was we were always talking about the sociological ultimate weapon, which is the ability to be able to tell you or to know what you're going to do before you do it. Mm. And we are in that state now.
Oh my God.
So we can understand, and this is the new world, right? This is something that with machine learning and artificial intelligence, we're able to tell you, okay, if I can analyze Zoe, same age, same socioeconomic status, and we get 1 million of you in essence, and we all have you on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram, then we can tell you, okay, what are the outcome variables for Zoe's? If a Zoe makes a left turn here, if Zoe decides to, would Zoe be apt to travel? Well, we can tell you probably with enough data down to the week when you're going to take your vacation 6 months out. And then we can start sending you ads. This is what Facebook does, right? They're able to analyze that data and very clearly tell you, yes, this person is interested on going on a trip between now and now a date. And if you advertise to them, they will buy. So that can then just be expanded to so many different applications like quit prediction. So for us, we can very clearly with enough data, and the data is the really important part, tell you someone is going to quit their job. Zoe is going to quit her job because she is unhappy with her manager and she's actively looking for another position. And you need to be able to come in and figure out, okay, Zoe, can I change your manager? Can I put you in another position? Can I put you in another department so that we're reducing our employee or basically expanding employee retention?
Okay, so it's badged as an employee engagement tracking tool. I can obviously see the dystopia version of this where it becomes spyware on staff. So please counter the dystopian vision of this because it's
so here's the other thing is we do follow the EU GDPR requirements there's a lot of apps out there that will not, that are basically stealthware. Mm-hmm. So there's very specific requirements, and we've always been on that side of history because we're primarily trying to be focused on productivity. So we can also tell you, let's say that you have 1,000 sales reps. I can tell you within a month whether a new sales rep is going to be in the top 10% of your sales team or the bottom 10% of your sales team based off of how that person works. Because I can analyze what your successful people are doing and what your unsuccessful people are doing because I have an outcome variable, which is how much money they make, if that's your definition of productivity. And then I can have an AI to build that model for you. And then once we put new people in the system, we can see very clearly, okay, this person is going to be very successful or this person is not going to be so successful.
Okay.
So that's basically, where we're at with regards to staff.com. So we've had this GDPR EU requirements, which is something that most tech companies need to really pay attention to. It's coming into fruition, I think, in the next 2 to 3 months. And basically it is focused on 3 major rules. The employee must be able to see all of their data. They must be able to edit that data, meaning they need to, if they want to delete it, they can. And then they need to be able to turn the software on and off.
Okay.
So those are the 3 major rules with regards to active time tracking. Yeah. And if you don't do that, there are a lot of companies that do stealth time tracking, and that is illegal in the EU. And I personally don't believe that necessarily makes you any more productive. That just monitors what you're doing. As a kind of a meta perspective towards the future of technology, I see 2 separate visions for the future. One vision is a very select group of people are able to have complete access to everyone else. So like the NSA, the CIA, the CSIS, SIS, all these organizations will basically know everything that you're doing at all times. Facebook knows this already. Facebook has much better data than the KGB, than, CSIS, than CIA, FBI. They're way better at it because they make billions of dollars off of ads directly targeting that. I'm positive, they probably have an algorithm that could predict when someone is going to commit a terrorist act. Almost instantaneous. I mean, it's very easy to be able to qualify for that if you have enough endpoints inside of the system. But they would never give that information to the CIA or the FBI because they are about data security, but they're data security for themselves because they want to make money off of it. So there's that vision of the future, which I don't like. It's a dystopian version of the future. Then there's another version of the future, which I think is what's going to happen, which is everyone will know everything about everyone else. And so that's the version that I would like to live in. There's no secrets left in society. And then there's the third version that everyone thinks that we live in today, which is personal privacy still exists, and it does not. Right now, we live in an environment where, you know, we could, I'm sure with enough time and pressure, I could scrape all of your Facebook messages, you know, personal messages, all your personal emails, all that data. I could throw it into a machine learning algorithm, and I could figure out a lot about you, or I could get a lot of dirt on you very quickly and easily. All these companies can do that anyways right now. So do you want to live in that world, or do you want to live in a world in which everything is open? And I feel like that's the future that I want to be able to live in, because I don't think we're going to live in a future where we have personal privacy. I unfortunately just don't think that that's going to continue to exist. And the people that think that they do have personal privacy, they just haven't looked at the problem deep enough. And for us, we're a very small part of this system, but we are, I mean, even our company, we have hundreds of thousands of different employees that are on our system. We do tens of millions of hours, you know, a month now in data that we just collect into our system. And before, we could never actually gain insights from it because it's too much data to go through. But an AI can, because it can just run calculations so much faster than a human, and it can also understand where there are correlations that are statistically significant, unlike a human that just can't think of those types of things at that scale. So it's a very exciting time, and exciting can be scary. All these tools are just like dynamite. You know, they can be used for good, or they can be used for evil.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is the world of transparency is demanding integrity, because you can't get away with stuff. And certainly I've seen that with other types of software like Glassdoor, right? And something I talk about in my keynotes is that kind of platform is calling employers to account, saying, if you've got a crappy company and crappy culture, your staff are going to talk about it, and here are some examples.
Yes.
And so it's encouraging people to lift their game and to really look at the internal dynamics of their company and how they're looking after staff. So what you're offering is a version of that focused on productivity specifically. Right. So on that, so I want to talk about how you manage a remote workforce. So one of the things I'm interested in my business is what helps teams, leaders, and organizations be boundless. How can they confront the future and get rid of the barnacles and the stuff that holds them back? And one of the questions I explore with a lot of my organizations is, how can they handle this diversity of teams where you have some remote workers, some office workers? You've got a completely remote workforce. How do you build really strong culture when it's so diverse and so divided, if you like?
The culture question is quite interesting, because a lot of people talk about culture, but I don't know whether or not a lot of people really understand what they mean when they talk about culture. So my definition of culture is what would appear weird to others. So as an example, everyone wears clothes, right? So that's not culturally unique between the culture of me and you. But if we weren't wearing clothes and we saw that as something that we just always do, people looking in would think that's kind of weird. So when we think about culture, we think about, what do we do that is odd, that's unique to our organization and not to others? And the big critical part for us is the ability to be able to work remotely. And that drops our ability to communicate as efficiently, as an example. It also cuts our labor costs, just in terms of housing people, having computers for everybody, having office equipment, all that kind of stuff. It's about 25% cheaper. Even if you hire the same type of person in the same area, it's about 25% cheaper, which is a big savings, particularly if you can figure this kind of stuff out at scale. But in terms of culture, what we do is we have culture documentation. So everyone has to go through the culture doc. That's the very first document that they interact with when they join the company. I have an interesting video, which is like the funny quirks about me. So I have about a 20-minute video in which I just talk about how to work with me and how not to work with me, because sometimes you miss a lot of the nonverbal cues that just get communicated through face-to-face interactions, and they're not picked up as much on video. So I talk about all these little quirks because sometimes you can misconstrue an email or a Slack message or a Skype message, something like that. So we make sure that we have that communication, or people understand who I am, particularly when they're managing, when I'm managing them, when they're reporting to me. And then one of the other things that we do is we always have retreats. So we have a retreat before our conference that's happening in late June called Running Remote. Before that, we're having our entire team fly into Ubud, Bali, and there'll be, I believe it's a 3 to 4 day retreat in which we review everything that we've currently done throughout the last year, and we make plans for next year, and then we just all communicate face to face. And that is also really great to be able to energize the team and communicate, not only communicate, but reinforce that cultural documentation. And before this entire process, we also hire for culture fit. So we know what's weird for us, and we know how to find those other types of weird people. We have a lot of testing to be able to find the people that are unique or weird like us. That, as an example, we usually hire introverts. Introverts work better in remote work environments than extroverts. Extroverts need to interact with a lot of people. They get lonely faster. So introverts are really happy to be able to work on their own. We qualify for that. We make sure that we're trying to get people that will tell us what they did instead of asking what to do. Mm. And that's really important when looking at a remote culture, because if I'm talking with the Southeast Asian team, we have a bunch of product managers in Thailand, as an example. We have a design and product team in Thailand. So if I tell them to do something and then they don't know they haven't properly interpreted the instructions and they just freeze and they don't do anything, then it's 12 hours before I can actually tell them what to do properly. So what they always need to do is just make their own assumptions, go in, try something. 98% of the time, even if you break something, we can figure out how to fix it. So for us, it's really big on taking action, not asking anybody, what should I do?
Cool. So from a technology point of view, what are your communication platforms that you use? You mentioned Slack. Is that the main communication tool that you use?
So we use Slack. I'm coming to a bit of an interesting kind of crossroads with regards to Slack. I don't know whether or not synchronous communication is that useful towards workers' long-term well-being. And Slack is a perfect example of synchronous communication. And I believe that asynchronous communication may be a better method.
Can you explain the difference, please?
So synchronous communication is I'm getting a text message at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, Liam, you need to get up right now. There's a problem that I need to talk to you about. Okay, that's synchronous communication. Or synchronous communication is I'm at Easter dinner and I'm having dinner, and I get a message from somebody on Slack saying, hey, you're going to completely trash the rest of my workday if you don't send me this 3-minute email. Can you send me this 3-minute email right now? That's synchronous. Asynchronous is you have work hours and then you buffer all of those messages on the top and end of those work hours. That's something that I think we should be looking at in society, or sorry, in particularly in remote work environments. But it's something that, because remote work is so new, there hasn't really been a playbook that's been built around that. So I'm concerned about that. Now, we still use Slack, but I don't know whether or not it's the right choice long term. And a couple other tools is we use Asana, we use Basecamp, we use Skype, we use Zoom for large scale meetings. But we use Google Apps. That's probably the core of everything that we do. And then we use a lot of process documentation software to be able to put all of our processes in the cloud, digitize them, and then be able to communicate them quickly and easily to employees all over the world. And that's pretty much our entire stack.
Okay. So I have another question about culture apps. So some of the stuff I've been looking at and researching and people want to know about are things like online recognition tools like e-cards and things that you can send little badges and awards to. Do you use any type of thing like that? And what's your thought on that?
So we've looked at it. We've actually looked at gamifying Time Doctor to a degree, saying like, hey, you were the most productive person in your team this week. And I don't know whether it's my own bias to this or whether it is true, or whether I believe that I'm thinking in the right way, but I think it's kind of bullshit. Like, I think at the end of the day, it's, I want to provide a work environment in which you can work wherever you want, whenever you want, focus on getting really great work done, connected to the mission of what we want to accomplish as a company. And I have very clear quantitative KPIs that I've set forward. And if you accomplish those KPIs, then I'll give you more resources. And if you don't, I won't. And because we're all focused on that goal that we want to achieve. So I think when we tie people in, we talk a lot about in the company, when we talk about different employees, we say, okay, are they in or are they out? Like, are they in, like, are they doing this not just to get a check? And if they're not there to just get a check, then they're 4 or 5x more productive than people that are there just to get a check. But a couple of years ago, I had a bit of an issue with a department, and I recognized that I didn't nip this in the bud. It was going to become a much bigger problem. It was growing like cancer inside of the organization. So at one of our team retreats, I set out $5,000 checks for everybody. And I brought that team in and I said, hey, we all know that there's an issue here. And I think it's more of an issue of you guys just don't seem to be engaged. And I want to know whether you're interested in still continuing on in this company and being engaged. And I'm going to make it really easy for you. Anybody that wants to walk out the door, we'll fly you back to wherever you are right now, and we'll give you a $5,000 check on top of your 2 months pay. I'll cut you a check right now. You just got to walk out the door. And nobody did, thankfully, and they got it, which was, okay, and all of the sort of interpersonal issues that they had inside of the organization, inside of that department, just went away, because I just wanted to reinforce we're here for something that I'm personally very passionate about. I could work, entrepreneurship doesn't make you as much money on average as working at a Fortune 500. Mm. I could make a lot more money working somewhere else. I have a lot of friends that make a lot more money working in other places, but I choose to be here because it gives me the freedom to be able to work the way that I'd like to work. And it's a project that I'm very passionate about. So I'm very disciplined about only working with people that have that same kind of mindset, and giving them a little gold badge at the end of the day, I don't think is really going to change that significantly.
Okay. So it's a little bit of you've got to be internally motivated. You've got to have clear structure and identifiable goals and results that people work to, and they've got to be mission focused. And that is sort of a self-perpetuating incentive, if you like. And also, if they meet their KPIs, they get resources, which is what you call, is that a reward type system, or what do you mean by resources? So
most of the people that want to work with us, right, that work inside of the company, they are they just want to do more of what they're currently doing.
Okay.
So would you like another 10 blog writers? Show me how you're like, show me what you're doing right now. Show me the up and to the right curve. And I will give you unlimited resources to be able to continue to get that curve up and to the right. But if we're currently here and you can't show me quantitatively whether or not we're moving that number, that's another big thing for us that's weird, is everything for us is quantitative. It's very much, if you cannot prove that you're moving the needle, don't bring that information to me. If we're having a debate about, let's say, adding a feature, if you can't give me a quantitative argument as to why we should make that decision, don't table it, because it's just not what we live in the age of the internet where we can collect all of that data and we can get such precise measurements of everything that's happening with our customers. We can tell you what's going to make them more successful. You just need to analyze the data. And people that say, well, I feel like this would be the right move. You can feel all you want, but you've got to follow it up with quantitative proof.
Okay. And
that's the thing that we do, is if you can show us you're up to and to the right, I will give you more and more resources. And the vast majority of the time, they don't want more money for themselves, or they don't want recognition. They just want to be able to accomplish what they were setting out to do in the first place.
Very cool. So I want to ask another question, which is parallel to recognition, and it's about appreciation. So Gary Chapman writes about the 5 love languages, and recognition is more about acknowledgement of work achieved, quality and quantity of work achieved. Appreciation is more about acknowledgement and support of the individual. And he talks about the 5 languages, love languages, so words of affirmation, time spent, gifts, physical touch, and I can't remember the 5th one. Oops. So do you incorporate, what's the human side of your business? How do you do that sort of thing?
Well, so we can't touch people that often because we're halfway around the world, and that one we only do when we're at the retreats. We hug it out a bit, but in terms of recognition, what we usually do is I do a 1-week sync, and I have a meeting document that I have for every different department that I work with. And I just basically review all of the different variables that connect, the KPIs that connect to that organization, to that department. And we start with like the celebration component. So for the individual, what are you individually proud of this week that you accomplished the previous week? So that's one point. So I want to be able to start every meeting with some positive affirmations, in essence. I closed this deal. I spoke to Zoe, and and I convinced Zoe to have Liam on the podcast, that type of thing. Then what did we achieve as a team?
Did somebody get a celebration for that?
I was very excited about it, especially after I read your site and just kind of looked at everything. I was like, oh, this is going to be a very interesting one. So what team, achievements have we achieved together? And then I usually put in some customer headlines that have happened within the last week. So somebody saying, hey, your software completely saved my business. Your software, is something that I've been looking for years, and I finally found something that's actually able to improve my productivity. Those types of things. So that's the first component that we start with. And then we get into the more quantitative stuff, but we always start with that celebration. And for me, it's kind of a way to put everybody, or at least my version of putting everybody, into a little bit of a positive spin for the day. And that's where you can really recognize people individually, and usually point, someone out and just say, hey, it was really great that you closed this big deal. I know that you've been working on that for 6 months. How did you do it? That type of thing. Now, in terms of the other variables, it's like, I don't think we're doing a great job at it. Laureen, who's our director of HR, is quite a bit better at it than me. But even with that, between me and Rob, I would say I'm more the one on the emotional scale, and he's more on the He's more the developer mindset, the mathematician, the physicist type of mindset. I'm more the marketing, sales, advertising, human interaction type of side of it. But with those two sides, I don't know. I'd love to be able to get your thoughts on this. I don't think that we're doing a great job at that, just from who we are as people, because for us, we really qualify for, at the very beginning, what do you want to do with your life? And how does that connect to the company? And usually a lot of the questions that we'll ask in those first interviews, people will think they're giving the right answers, quote unquote, but they're actually giving the absolute opposite of what we're looking for, which is great. We're trying to get those people out of the system as quickly as possible to make sure that we have the right people on the bus.
Look, I think that's I think that's a good thing to do. You know, this is what the company's all about. Is this what aligns with what you want with your world? That's great in terms of building loyalty and synergy between company and individuals. So what I find is what often leaders get wrong is that they don't have enough a cadence of engagement. So they don't have enough regular purposeful interactions where you look at both the external results as well as looking at the friction points. And friction points are not just systems, they're also interpersonal. So being able to have the difficult conversations is, number one, the most common challenge that organizations and leaders have in terms of the thing that affects their culture the most. So, for example, there's a legal firm that I've been talking with, and they've got issues in terms of their remuneration structure, and their inability to actually put what's really on the table as the issue is causing them so much problem. So they've poured a solution to this challenge, but they haven't actually named the problem. And the ability to name the problem in a respectful way that keeps people's relationships growing and moving forward is one of the key things.
And is this connected to an interpersonal relationship, or is this connected to more business metrics? Or you're talking about like
they overlap?
There's just okay, got it.
So
because I know for us, the biggest reasons why people quit their job is because of inter-office politics. They don't like their manager. They don't like their coworkers. That's the biggest reason. Remote work, and there's a fantastic study with about 20,000 different people that MIT did it, and it just came out about 2 or 3 years ago, shows retention in remote organizations is about 20 to 30% higher than in the same control groups for others, because they're just not interacting with those people in a face-to-face basis where people are just hating getting up in the morning. I know for us, our retention is, I think last year was approximately 92% over the last year. So we've been pretty happy with that. Anything above 90, I think we're quite happy with. And that's another thing that, that's the KPI that our HR director is really measured by is, did you get the right people on the bus? Did we have to let them go later because they weren't the right fit? In which case that was the HR director's fault. And also, how is that manager interacting with that individual? Is that manager giving what that individual needs? So basically, we kind of see the employee, let's say that we're going to let an employee go. We see them as having the least amount of blame inside of the organization. And we, in essence, share that blame between the manager and between the person that did that initial hiring. That team together, why is that did not work? Were they not the right person? Were they not the right culture? We had someone that left about 1.5 years ago, and he broke up with his long-term partner. And he just said, I've got to find a job that's in an actual office because I'm lonely.
Yeah.
And he had been with this woman for 6-7 years, and they worked in the same home. They worked together. They both worked remotely. And he said, now I feel really lonely and I have to go find a job somewhere else. Okay, well, that was not the right fit for us. We should have recognized where that was. And one of the other things that we've been working on is trying to figure out whether we can do any type of psychology remotely and whether we could deploy that en masse. And we even kind of looked at, could we get because you're a coach. I have had many business coaches. I think it's such an important component of the way that you operate a business, particularly if you can afford it. People don't think that it's a really important part of running a business, but even just having somebody who's been through a couple of those situations and even just having them talk to you is just such a powerful way to be able to move your business forward. And I know for me, the previous coach I had before my current coach was a psychologist, PhD certified psychologist. And he spent 20 years in Fortune 500 executive roles. So he was able to have that good collection. And for me, it was really great to know, okay, I'm not this screwed up. Everyone thinks like this. Everyone has these weird types of thoughts. Everyone, and the other issue too is as a business owner, you can't bitch up, right? Like there's no one left at the top. So you go and talk to your coach and you say, hey, everyone's pissing me off and I'm really unhappy about it. And then the coach says, well, maybe it's because you're an asshole, right? And then it's like, click, okay, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I should be nicer to people. Those types of things, it's just like so valuable. And getting that for employees, I think is really important. I'm sure for people that are listening right now that own businesses, they, and we see this in a very interesting way at team retreats because everyone is together. And then me and Rob don't really get to hang out with any of the other people. Like they'll hang out with us, but then there's like the cool other party that's, at like 2:00 in the morning that we don't necessarily get invited to because they're obviously talking about us. And they don't want to, or they don't want me, they don't want us to be included. Those are the types of things that we want to be able to make sure that we're making people feel as comfortable as humanly possible. And I think there's a great company right now that's coming to Running Remote in June. It is the HR director for GitHub, and GitHub is a massive development repository for code. And her talk is going to be entitled How She is Reprogramming Workers for Remote Work. So getting all of the things that were in the physical workspace, all of the things that like there's a different playbook for working remote as to working physically. Yeah. So she has a 3-month training program to get them out of the mindset of this face-to-face interaction and getting more into a virtual perspective. For me, it's actually, cool. I've always done business that way, but it's such an interesting problem for people to face. Can you build a process where, let's say someone's been working in an office for 20 years and now they're working remotely? There are some major issues. And if you can't take advantage of that talent in the right way, it's such a shame. So they've built a program specifically to kind of reprogram them into working remotely.
Yeah, getting used to your new life as a remote worker.
That's it, exactly. And it's one of those things that I've been thinking about deeper and deeper because we do lose people to the I'm lonely. Okay, well, if I could solve that loneliness problem for you, you're a great worker. You're passionate about what we're doing. You love doing what you're doing, but you've got this other issue. How can I solve that problem for you? Which is something that I never really thought I was going to be dealing with when I started the business, but it is one of those things that's pretty critical right now to just making sure that everybody is firing on all cylinders. So
I'm curious about that loneliness thing, because I would have thought like co-working spaces is a good cure for that, or does that just that's more a bigger cost than working from home?
No, it was so we gave that individual that option.
Yeah.
And they were looking into it, and then they just realized, I have this offer somewhere else and I'd just love to be able to give it a shot. It's nothing about you guys. It's about me. And I just want to be able to be in an office and connect to, people that are working on the same project day in and day out. And okay. that was respect. Like I understood that. But we have co-working spaces all over the world now, and we have mini offices that we've set up So if you want to work out of our Bali office, you can. If you want to work out of our Phuket office, you can. Our Sydney office, our Manila office, you can. About 20% of our team are digital nomads.
Yeah.
So they just, pack up their laptop, they put it in their bag, and then they're off to another spot. So we've just realized, okay, let's set up little offices around all the hubs that digital nomads usually go to. And the next one we're going to try to set up is in Medellin, which I'm very excited. Medellin in Colombia, which is I don't know if you've probably watched Narcos or something like that. That is where the Colombian drug lords were, the Medellin cartel.
Yeah.
And Medellin is a city in Colombia up in the mountains, and the average temperature 365 days a year is between, I think it's like 27 degrees, and the variation is like 4 degrees on one side, 4 degrees on the other. It's always nice in Medellin. And because most regular people are terrified of Medellin because they heard about all of the killings that have been happening there, most people don't go, but the digital nomads go. High-speed internet, fiber, and a whole bunch of mansions that are left behind by the drug cartels that you can get very cheaply. So it's a great place for these digital nomads to go and hang out. And very, very little regular people, like no one goes for a vacation to Medellin, but these digital nomads, they literally live in Medellin. So that's another one that we're trying to set up over the next year.
Let me know when you've got your mansion set up. I want to have a look at that.
There we go. Yeah, you can come for a visit.
That sounds great. Oh, awesome. Oh my goodness. So we've been talking ages, and it's breakfast time for me. Mm-hmm. And it's probably late afternoon, early afternoon over there?
It's late afternoon for me, but I'm just entering my Monday meeting sessions. So I'll be up till 2:00 in the morning. It's 5 p.m. for me right now. Because I live in, we work remotely. I need to speak to the other side of the planet, and you're just waking up much like the rest of the planet is. So now I'm going to be doing my meetings till about 2 a.m. And that's the only day that I stay late. And then the rest of them, I usually work I start around 10 and I usually go till about 5 p.m.
Okay.
On average, which is a pretty relaxed day for me in comparison to a lot of other workers.
Yeah. Fantastic. Liam, that was amazing. I love talking to you, finding out about your work and your philosophy and all the scary and exciting things that are happening in remote working land. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
No worries.
That was very Australian of you. When does a Canadian say no worries?
I think because Rob, my co-founder, it's always, he's always saying that. And maybe that's just worked its way into me.
Well, good. Well done on that.
Yeah. That was cool. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.